Hi, a huge welcome to Steve's Kitchen. What is this exactly? Well, that will become very apparent as you watch this video through. Now, a lot of people today are gluten intolerant. I am very fortunate. I have a cast iron constitution, can eat pretty much anything. But I do have a lot of friends that we cook for where they can't have gluten in their diet. What exactly is gluten anyway? Hopefully this video will explain to you exactly what gluten is and why it's so difficult to replace when we're baking. So join me now and let me show you what it's all about. Now in modern days, many of the grains we rely on for our foods, barley, rye, spelt even, but mainly wheat, contains gluten, or at least it contains two proteins which when joined together, that's gliadin and glutenin, joined together bond and become gluten. It's these bonded proteins which are very difficult for some people to digest and can cause all sorts of problems. Now our stronger flours are high in protein, or they're high in the glutenin and gliadin, and they're ideal for making our pizzas and breads. They're lovely in a stretchy elastic doughs. Whereas our cake flours, they have a lower concentration of these proteins. What does that mean exactly? Well, let me do some experiments and I'll show you. Now, firstly, I'm going to take that strong, high protein flour. I'm going to put 500 grams, that's about a pound, into a mixer, and I'm going to mix it for 10 minutes until I get a nice, smooth, elastic dough. Now after kneading that dough for 10 minutes, we've got this wonderful stretchy dough which is perfect for bread making. And then I'm going to repeat the same process with the cake flour, which is a lot lower in protein. Now with that cake flour after 10 minutes, it's still an elastic dough, but you can see that it's a little bit coarser. It hasn't bonded together quite as well as the bread flour. However, both of these doughs still contain gluten. This one would be great for pizzas and bread. This one is far better for cakes and cookies. And what we best remember, it's actually the water we've introduced to this flour that's enabled those proteins to bond together. The actual kneading of the dough just allows the glutens to stretch out and get more elastic. But what exactly is gluten and how is it present in this dough? Well, we can actually do a little experiment to show that more closely, because the gluten that's in here, the combination of those two proteins, is held together, or at least it's surrounded by the starches, and we can wash those away. And I think you'll find it quite fascinating what we can produce. I'll show you how. Come over to the sink. Now I've got my bread flour here and I'm going to put it into a strainer with water in here, and what we're going to do is actually wash the starches away. You have to be patient, it will take quite a lot of time. Now you see all this cloudy starch that's left at the top here. We're going to tip that away, and eventually after a few washes all we're going to have is pure gluten. What I've decided to do is run the water over the bread dough until I get all the starch out. I've got the bowl below just to save me from losing any of the gluten. Eventually most of the starch is going to be washed out of this, and we're going to be left with this elastic gluten mass. I'm then going to repeat the same process, but this time with the plain all-purpose or cake flour. Now eventually after some minutes of mixing, look at this, we've ended up with almost pure gluten. There might be a little starch still in there. This is the small amount that came from the cake flour, a much larger amount from the bread flour. This one I've been working a little bit, and you can start to see the elasticity in that gluten, and it's really quite a remarkable substance. And if I start to work this one as well and turn it round, it will also become a lot more elastic. There it is, it's starting to come together. Now this stuff is just like rubber. It's quite the most amazing, and this is the stuff that a lot of people's stomachs cannot digest. Now how do you replace that in baking? Well, those of us that have used xanthan gum or psyllium husk, you know that it doesn't have this sort of texture. This is just like a big rubber band. What I find remarkable is gluten absorbs a huge amount of water. This piece here is the dry piece I showed you earlier, is about the same size as this piece here. And as it dries, this one is light as a feather, all the water has come out, the surface tension keeps it round, and that's what produces great bread, it's what produces great pizza bread. I really don't have an answer for anybody here. There isn't anything I've come across that can replace pure gluten when baking. but maybe seeing it in this form will give you a better understanding as to why you can't tolerate gluten, or perhaps why we can't replicate gluten with xanthan gum or psyllium husk. It just really doesn't give the same sort of texture. So there it is. There is the gluten from out of a pound of bread flour. There's the gluten from cake flour, the same amount. I think it's fairly interesting. I just wanted to share this with you. Please share the love. Give this one the thumbs up. This stuff is sticky too. Have a great time. I'll see you in the next video. Be good. Now, if you did this same experiment with rice flour, maize flour, potato flour, that is pretty much all starch and it would just wash away. You'd get no gluten in there at all. So I hope this has been informative for you. I'm sorry if it hasn't really solved the problem with gluten, but at least you understand what it is you're playing with. Be good, take care, stay in touch, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.